I'm giving you one chance. Apologize to him, or the wedding is off." Those words didn't just cut deep. They woke me up. Standing there in the middle of the cafe, the woman I loved looked at me like I was the villain. And the man sitting beside her, my fiancé's friend, had a smug grin on his face, like he'd already won. I used to imagine our wedding day 100 times. Her walking down the aisle, tears in her eyes. Me, waiting with a heart so full it could burst. But in that moment, I realized that day was never going to come, because I'd already made a decision. "I don't need to apologize," I said calmly, "because I called off the wedding this morning." Her smile dropped. Her mouth parted like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. And the guy next to her? That smug grin vanished instantly. You might think I was being petty, but this wasn't about ego. This was about dignity, about waking up before I lost myself completely. Because I gave her everything, my love, my loyalty, my future. And she gave him the benefit of the doubt. Let me take you back. Just 2 weeks ago, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. Now I'm the man who walked away before it was too late. For 3 years, I believed I had found my forever person. Her name was Aisha. She had this way of lighting up a room without trying. The first time we met was in the most ordinary of places, a bookstore. She was tucked in the corner aisle, arguing with herself over whether to buy a romance novel or a thriller. I jokingly suggested she get both. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Only if you promise to read the romance with me." That was the beginning. I was drawn to her warmth, her spontaneity, the way she always had a quote for every situation, usually from a book she half finished. I wasn't flashy or poetic like the characters she adored, but she said I made her feel grounded, safe. We started slow. Long conversations, late-night drives, stolen moments in crowded places. I was the quiet one. She was the firecracker. She talked me into dancing in the rain and traveling without a plan. She taught me to live in the now. I taught her to believe in stability. When I proposed, it was under the same cherry blossom tree where we had our first kiss. She cried. Ugly cried, actually. Said she'd waited her whole life for a love that didn't make her feel like she had to beg to be chosen. Back then, I thought I was the lucky one. We had our differences. She was impulsive. I was methodical. She believed in signs from the universe. I believed in calendars and logic. But love made those differences feel like pieces of a puzzle fitting perfectly. Or so I thought. I never saw the cracks forming, not clearly. Maybe because I trusted too much. Or maybe because I was too in love with the version of her I met in that bookstore. Hopeful, wild, and completely mine. Looking back, the shift was subtle. She started talking about this new friend from her office, Nashit. Said he was funny, a bit arrogant, but harmless. I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. I wasn't the jealous type. She'd laugh at his jokes while texting, mention his advice in random conversations, invite him to group hangouts, always insisting we were all friends. And I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Because Aisha was my future. My home. We chose our wedding venue together. Sampled cakes. Argued over guest lists. Took those cringy engagement photos in matching outfits. My mom adored her. My younger sister called her Bibi months before we got engaged. And I, fool that I was planning our honeymoon while someone else was planning how to replace me. Still, even now, a part of me wishes I could go back to those days. Just for a moment. Back when I still believed that love was enough, that trust wasn't a weakness, that Aisha would choose me over anyone else. But what I didn't know then was that while I was building a life with her, she was opening the door to someone who couldn't wait to tear it all down. And when he finally did, she didn't even hesitate to take his side. It started with a whisper. Not a real one, more like a strange tension. A cold undercurrent in a room that once felt warm. We were at a dinner party Aisha's office had arranged. She looked stunning in a deep maroon sari, her laugh echoing off the walls like music. But every time she laughed, it was at his jokes. Nah shit. The funny friend she kept bringing up. The guy she swore was like a brother, but who now couldn't seem to stop standing a little too close, speaking a little too softly, staring a little too long. I wanted to brush it off. I really did. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe this was what friendships looked like in her world. Casual touches, playful banter, inside jokes. But something about the way he looked at her? It wasn't friendship. Later that night, while she was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, not to snoop, just instinct. A message preview lit up the screen. Nah shit. I wish you'd let him go. You deserve more than a life with someone so boring. My stomach dropped. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I just stared at that one line, over and over, like it was written in fire. When she came out of the bathroom, I was still staring. She noticed. What's wrong? I didn't answer right away. I handed her the phone. She read the message, then locked the screen and placed it face down. Don't start, she said softly. He didn't mean it like that. Didn't mean it like that? I felt something in me snap, but I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked, why would he say something like that in the first place? He's just protective, she shrugged. He thinks you don't understand me the way he does. I felt like I'd been slapped. And do you agree with him? I asked, watching her face closely. She hesitated. Just a second, but long enough. A deal, she whispered. He just sees a side of me that's different. It doesn't mean I love you any less. But those words, different side, echoed in my mind for days. Different how? Different enough to talk about our relationship behind my back? Different enough to confide in another man when we had problems? And then came the bigger blow. A few days later, I was at her apartment, helping her pick the final wedding playlist. She left her laptop open while she took a call in the kitchen. I don't know what pulled me to it, instinct or desperation. I shouldn't have looked, I know. But I opened her chat thread with Nashit, and what I saw wasn't just messages. It was intimacy, inside jokes about me being too serious, screenshots of our conversations, ones I thought were private. Comments like, he wouldn't get this, or you always say what I wish he would. It wasn't physical, not that I could tell, but emotional betrayal? That was written all over it. And when I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She didn't even look shocked. She just said, you're overreacting. You're being insecure. I never cheated on you. And maybe she didn't. But standing there, holding 1,000 words that weren't meant for my eyes, I realized something. She had already left me. She just hadn't walked out the door yet. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Aisha slept beside me, her breathing slow and peaceful, like nothing had happened, like my heart hadn't cracked in half just hours before. I turned to face her, watching her in the dim light. This woman I had loved with everything inside me, the one I planned to marry, to grow old with. How could she be so calm? I wanted to wake her up and ask 1,000 questions, scream, demand answers, but what would be the point? She had already decided I was too serious, too predictable, not thrilling enough. Was that what she really thought of me? Was I just safe? The next morning I said nothing. I made us coffee like usual. We talked about her dress fitting like we always did. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, and I stood in the hallway like a ghost, watching the door click shut behind her. What kind of love was this? A love where I had to pretend nothing was wrong just to keep us from breaking? I started questioning myself. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe Nashit really didn't mean anything. Maybe she was just venting, and I was blowing it out of proportion. But every time I tried to convince myself, I remembered her words. He just sees a side of me that's different. Not better, not worse, just different. And yet it felt like she was choosing that side of herself over the one we built together. A week passed. The wedding date loomed closer. The stress should have been about flowers or guest seating, but my mind was consumed by quiet paranoia. She was texting more, laughing more at her phone. Whenever I walked into the room, she'd casually lock the screen or flip the phone upside down. I noticed everything, but I said nothing. One night, I tried to bring it up again. "Have you talked to Nashit recently?" She frowned. "Why do you keep asking me about him?" "Because he keeps saying things about me, about us, and you never seem bothered." She crossed her arms. "I already told you, you're overreacting." "So if I messaged a female friend of mine and told her you were boring and she deserved better, would you be okay with that?" "That's not the same," she said sharply. "Why not?" "Because you don't talk to anyone else like that. You don't open up like I do. That's just how I am. I need people to talk to." "People? Or one person?" I didn't say that out loud, but I felt it building inside me. The quiet storm. The ache of wanting to be enough for someone who kept reaching for someone else emotionally. Later that night, I sat alone in my car, parked outside her apartment. I stared at the glowing day. Every moment we spent together now felt fake. Her laughter, rehearsed. Her affection, like an obligation. Like she was playing a role, waiting for the next scene to begin. And still, I loved her. God help me. I loved her. How do you walk away from someone who still owns every part of your heart, even if they no longer deserve it? That was the question I asked myself every single day, until something happened that finally gave me the answer. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Again. I wasn't planning to do it. I hadn't turned into some obsessive fiancé spying on his partner. But something about that day, it pushed me over the edge. Aisha had told me she was going to a boutique to finalize her bridal jewelry with her cousin. Something didn't sit right. Maybe it was her voice, too cheerful, too rehearsed, like she'd practiced that excuse in her head. I followed her. I felt ashamed even as I tailed her Uber, hanging back in traffic. I hated what I was becoming, but I needed to know, needed truth, even if it broke me completely. They didn't go to a boutique. They didn't even head in that direction. Her car stopped near a small cafe tucked into a quiet street I'd never seen before. And then I saw her, stepping out, adjusting her scarf, looking around, and then he appeared. Nashit. He greeted her like they'd been meeting there for years. The hug lingered too long. Her smile was real. Too real. Not forced. Not the kind I'd been getting lately. I parked a few spaces down and watched through the windshield. They sat by the window, laughing, talking, leaning in close. Then he reached across the table and touched her hand. Not in a casual, friendly way. In a way that made my blood run cold. I don't remember how long I sat there. I felt frozen, number my throat, dry, heart racing so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Was this real? Was this the woman I had trusted with my future? After 20 minutes, I drove off. I couldn't sit there and watch her fall out of love with me one smile at a time. That night, I didn't mention anything. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I waited, and fate did the rest. The next morning I got a call from my younger sister. She sounded furious. "Is it true?" she asked without even greeting me. "Is what true? That you made Aisha cry? That you humiliated her in front of her friend?" "What? When?" "She said you barged into a cafe, started accusing her of cheating, and stormed off." My blood boiled. I hadn't said a word. I hadn't even been seen. She was already rewriting the narrative, turning herself into the victim before I could even process what had happened. And worse, she had gone crying to my family first, painting me as the controlling, insecure fiancé. It was then I realized something terrifying. She had prepared for this. She had anticipated I might find out. She had preemptively made me the villain in her story. And suddenly, everything felt crystal clear. She wasn't just confused. She was 2 steps ahead. And I was done being a pawn in her perfectly staged performance. I didn't confront her immediately. No, I waited. If she wanted to play games, I'd let her, but this time I'd be the one holding the final move. The wedding was 2 weeks away. My parents were sending out invitations. Her mother was finalizing the menu. Everyone was rushing around with excitement. Except me. I was calm, cold, done. Aisha, oblivious to what I knew, continued playing her part. She acted affectionate, updated Instagram with wedding prep, sent me cute texts like nothing had happened. But behind every smile, I could see the lies threading themselves into her eyes. So I made a decision, one she never saw coming. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, I called her family and mine together at our engagement venue. I told them we wanted to share something important, something private. She walked in, dressed perfectly, glowing like a bride. "This feels like a mini pre-wedding party," she giggled, slipping her hand into mine. I nodded, smiling. She had no idea. As we stood in front of our families, I cleared my throat and began, "Before this wedding happens, there's something I need to say." Her grip on my hand tightened slightly. "I want to start by thanking everyone who supported our journey, especially my parents, for trusting my choice, and Aisha's parents, for welcoming me so warmly." She smiled nervously. "Babe," I looked her straight in the eye. "But recently, I've come to realize something. Trust is not built on how perfect someone looks in photos, or how well they plan a wedding. It's built on honesty." The room went silent. "Aisha," I turned to her fully now, "when your so-called friend Nashit insulted me behind my back, you told me to apologize to him, or we couldn't move forward." She blinked. "Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because you made it a condition for our marriage. You said, apologize, or there's no wedding. But what you didn't know—" I pulled out my phone, opened the screen. There, captured in high definition, was a photo of her and Nashat at the cafe, laughing, holding hands. I had taken it the day I followed her. Dated. Time-stamped. The blood drained from her face. Murmurs rippled through the families. And while you were busy painting me as the insecure, controlling fiancé to everyone who would listen, I continued, you were the one meeting him behind my back, lying about it and preparing your exit plan. "Wait, no, she stammered, trying to hand the phone back. But I wasn't finished. "I won't be apologizing to Nashit. I won't be apologizing to you. And most importantly," I took a deep breath, locked eyes with her one last time, and said, "There won't be a wedding." Gasps filled the room. Her mother clutched her chest. My dad stood in stunned silence. Aisha stepped back, shaking her head like she could undo it all with a blink. You're overreacting. You don't understand what that photo was. I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You chose him. Emotionally, maybe even more. And you lied to my face every single day after." I turned to walk away, but paused just before the door. "I was ready to marry you, to fight for you, to give you everything. But you chose drama over devotion. And I choose peace." I walked out of that hall without looking back. Behind me, Aisha's voice cracked through the murmurs and gasps, trying to explain to her parents, trying to reach me. But I didn't stop. Not this time. For the first time in months, I breathed like my lungs actually worked. There were no wedding bells in my future, no white sherwani, no staged smiles for pictures that would have aged into bitterness. Just silence. And peace. The days that followed weren't as easy as I'd hoped. The gossip spread like wildfire. Some called me heartless. Others said I dodged a bullet. A few questioned whether it was all real, but I stayed quiet. Because I didn't owe anyone a single word. Aisha messaged me, then called, then messaged again. She begged for one conversation, said she was confused, said she needed clarity, said she was scared of making the wrong choice. As if I had been some backup plan she could always fall back on. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I had already heard everything I needed. Between her silence when I was being slandered and her smile across the cafe table from the man who belittled me. Her last message was a voice note. I didn't want to listen, but curiosity. It gets the best of us. So I hit play. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I was scared of how good you were to me. Nashit reminded me of my past. He was familiar. But you were everything I thought I didn't deserve. I wanted to see if he still meant something before I married you. And I realized too late that he didn't. It was always you. It was a well-delivered monologue. Emotional. Almost believable. Almost. But some things, once broken, don't need to be fixed. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to burn. And this one? It was reduced to ash the moment she told me to apologize to the man who mocked me just so she could maintain her perfect little image. It's been 6 months now. My life is quieter, simpler. I read more. I travel a bit. I started writing again, something I had put off while being consumed by wedding planning and relationship drama. And yes, sometimes I wonder how things could have been different if she had just chosen honesty. But those thoughts pass quickly, because now I see it clearly. Love isn't just about flowers and vows and staged proposals. It's about who stands beside you when no one else will, who defends you when others doubt you, who holds your hand, not because it's convenient, but because it's right. I haven't met someone new yet. I'm not in a rush. Healing doesn't need a deadline. But there's this girl I see at the local library. Quiet, gentle, eyes full of calm. We've exchanged a few smiles. Nothing more. And maybe that's all it needs to be for now. Because peace, true peace, is more intoxicating than any grand romance ever was. And as for Aisha, last I heard, Nashit had ghosted her. Disappeared once the attention faded and the drama cooled down. Her parents are still embarrassed. The same aunties who praised her perfection now whisper a little more sharply when her name is brought up at weddings. That's karma for you. It doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it just sits beside you in silence, letting you drown in the mess you created. I don't wish her pain. Truly, I don't. But I'm glad I walked away. I'm glad I didn't apologize. I'm glad I chose myself. Because sometimes the boldest form of love is the one you give to yourself, when you finally stop begging someone else to see your worth. And if nothing else, I'll always remember this: the man I was when I almost married her, and the man I became when I didn't.